Can't no tell Mississippi.
We will now call the September 11, 2024 Caddo Parish School Board Special Session to order. Pledge of Allegiance and Invocation by Board Member Barry Rachal.
Let's join together in prayer. Dear Lord God, our Father, we thank you for your love, grace, and mercy. Father, all the fruit of the Spirit that you give us, Father, you tell us that love is the greatest. And Father, I just love the opportunity that you've given us and the call that you've given each one of these board members here to serve. Father, help us to seek your wisdom, Father. Father, let it not be our will, but your will. Father, we thank you for all of the students and all of the staff. And Father, we just thank you for all that you're doing in each one of us and through each one of us. Father, now just guide us as we go through this session, Father, and seek your will to hire and seek and find the next superintendent for Caddo Parish Schools, Father. Father, just be with us in all that we say and do. And they all said, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Tharp.
Thank you, Madam President. I just have a point of personal privilege and ask that we take just a moment to bow our heads in remembrance of the tragedies that happened on 9/11 23 years ago.
Mr. Dixon.
And while we are following a great R&B singer in our culture, Frankie Beverly has passed too, and while we remembering those soldiers, those citizens that lost their lives this day 23 years ago, want to recognize and honor him as well.
Thank you.
One other thing, Madam Chair, I also want to recognize two city council members that are in the office, in the audience, Councilman Green and Councilman Taylor. Thank you all for coming today.
Board members, please respond to roll call.
Yeah, I messed up. Come on, sweet baby. I clicked too quick. Let me grab it right there.
We're now moving to the visitor section. The Caddo Parish School Board welcomes your input and comments regarding items that are on the special session agenda. If you would like to speak regarding an item on today's special session agenda, please come to the podium, state your name and address for the record, then make your remarks to the entire board. Please limit your comments to no more than 3 minutes. A time clock on the monitors and screens will help you be aware of your time. When the time runs out, your time is up. It is the board's policy not to respond individually to members of the audience. When appropriate, the board may refer concerns to staff to be addressed. As this is a public meeting, we ask you to refrain from referring to personnel by name or incident. In accordance with school board policy, derogatory statements about or directed at a school board member, any employee, or any other person shall not be allowed.
Good evening, Breeka Peoples, 9,000 Walker Road. It's very upsetting to see that we have 6 black members on the school board, all representing urban community, yet they're not listening to the voices of the people they serve. What message does this send to our black boys and girls who aspire to achieve their doctorate degree when it feels like it isn't enough to get through the process you put in place? It feels like the board has given up, our black officials have given up on us. Meanwhile, we see the 6 white members sticking together regardless of the personal differences. It's confusing and frustrating to see that despite taking an oath to represent our people, our black board members seem to be divided and ineffective. I'm asking someone to make a motion to stop this current interview process and follow the procedures you all chose to implement it. Just as District 8 representative put forward a motion to only interview 1 candidate, members from District 2 that's not here, 3, 5, 6, 7, and 12 should also make a motion to halt this interview. We need revolutionary change and accountability from our board members to ensure they truly represent our support of our community. Let's work together. Listen, there's some people out here I don't get along with, but when it comes to our people, we at the forefront together. Whatever we got going on right now, after, we can fight later. But right now, we got to fight for our kids. What y'all all leave here today is y'all legacy. I don't understand why y'all not together. Like, it's crazy. This is the only board that I've seen in Northwest Louisiana, across the state, that's not together. I need y'all to get it together.
Good morning. My name is Shannon Wall, 6384 Pawnee Trail, Shreveport, Louisiana, and I'm the principal of Northwood High School. And I have taken a half-day UPR to make sure that I can be here on my time and not on work time. I'm currently in my 20th year in Caddo Parish as an administrator, my 18th year as a principal, my 32nd year as an employee of Caddo Parish. I've seen a lot of superintendents in my time. And let me say that by far, the best superintendents are the ones who have come through this parish. Ollie Tyler is the one who hired me. I love Ollie Tyler. She's a Blanchard girl. To this day, I love Ollie Tyler. My family loves Ollie Tyler. My second favorite, Dr. Goree. Dr. Goree stood beside me when one of my students died on the playground. He was there when we had the memorial on that playground. He cried with me that day. I love Ms. Tyler and Dr. Goree because they're from here. They understand us. They understand our kids, our climate, our community, our culture. They're both African Americans. They understand my African American students, and they understand my white students. I'll say it again. I love those two people, and I always will love them. My daughter sang at Dr. Goree's celebration. Through the years, it's leaders like Dr. Goree and Ollie Tyler, and I'll say it, Keith Burton, who have stood by me and stood by other principals in this parish through our great successes, and we've had many successes as a parish, and through our terrible, terrible losses of students and faculty and staff members. They've been with us through those times. They understand what we need. They've been a great support system. And I understand there's a lot of emotionally charged opinions in this audience, and I can appreciate that. Everybody has that right. But as a principal in this parish, I have to say, we support Keith Burton. We support your choice. Please know that. And I also must say that I and my 2 children have never been more inspired by anybody more than Miss Lisa Woolfolk and her story. And she is an African American. My personal hero in this life is Husher Calhoun, who is an African American. And I say that because the color of your skin doesn't determine who you can inspire and who you can lead. I've never been more inspired by the African American leaders who have been in my life. I was a high school English teacher at Northwood High School, and my life changed the moment I taught the I Have a Dream speech by Martin Luther King Jr. It changed my world. I was a white male from Blanchard, and we all understand what that means in the 1980s. And it changed my life. So please know that this decision should not be about race.
Thank you.
It should not be about politics. Thank you for your time. I appreciate what you do and who you are.
Good morning, members of the board. John Glover, 9100 Walker Road, apartment 217, Shreveport, Louisiana, 7/11/18. Yesterday, we all faced some news, some breaking news. The TRO that was filed to stop this process was not granted. It wasn't granted not because of race. It was not granted because they did not meet the definition for the TRO, immediate danger. There is immediate danger here today. See, there are those who would believe that this situation is about race. It's not for me. It was from the inception, you all choosing the most qualified candidate to serve as our next superintendent for the next 4 years that you all are awarded to do. Louisiana statute governs what you all do. The statute says your interim can only be in place for 6 months. Then you all had to do your due diligence. But in doing so, back on June 18, when you all had your first Caddo Parish special session addressing the processes that you would implement or would address and then support at a meeting, you all had some problems yourselves. Comments such as, we don't want the public believing that we're rushing this process. Well, that timeline that you all had initially addressed would have dictated such. But you all did go back and you addressed and you realigned that timeline. But what you didn't recognize was this. You didn't realign the hearts and minds of what you were doing. See, at the end of the day, I've heard the conversation that said, in this venue, we will only focus on the positive of the school district. At that time, I was coming before you all countless of times, trying to implore you all to give attention to the 30-plus DNF schools you all had. Very little, if any, was said aside from a presentation that one of your presenters provided showing different rubrics and what you all were to aspire to. You don't have to look at the clock, I'm watching it. I only ask that you all will provide due diligence in your process today. See, we won't get to meet the candidate as we have in times previous. I'm trying to figure out why not. What is it that we should know as the public that you may know that we may never get until such time of the seating of that lone candidate as our superintendent of Caddo Public Schools? This is not an indictment against any of you all, just what you brought before me, a constituent in this parish. You all think about that as you talk about we have love one for another. Thank you.
Jacqueline Miller, 6207 Nottoway Drive, Shreveport, Louisiana, 7/11/19. To our interim superintendent, Ms. Woodfork, and to the board, I stand before you dismayed, disheartened, just really infuriated about how things have taken place. This current state of affairs. You know, you all are very fragmented. You all seem very, and I'm just going to say the conservatives, morally bankrupt because you skirted around the process. You manipulated the process to get the person you wanted in. It's like we've had all these black superintendents. Now it's high time that we get a white superintendent. That's the only way I can see it. But let me tell you this. You need to think about your legacy. You need to think about selling your soul for that biblical pottage of stew. That temporary pottage of stew. One day somebody is going to warm those seats that you're sitting in. And what will you leave behind? You should always leave a place better than you found it. And let me say this. You all, I see the bitterness. When we have one board member who tries to take a deep dive into questioning things, making inquiries, and we see the abruptness, the bitterness, and just don't want the intolerance. What is wrong with you? What kind of message are you sending to our students? And when they see 5 qualified African Americans who were rejected over someone who's less qualified, I'm sure Mr. Burton is going to do an excellent job in his interview. But you all are probably going to give him some softball questions that a 5th grader could answer, and he is just a shoo-in. But let me tell you this. Think about what you're leaving behind. Think about the message that you are sending to this community. Thank you.
Good morning, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I love each and every one of you all, and my other sisters and brothers that's in the audience. But I have to take this to a different
Can you
level.
state your name? Can you state your name and address, please?
Oh, I'm sorry. Forgive me. Because for some reason, I just figured that all the board members knew who I was, but I'm Clifton Starks, and I live at 3529 Milky Way, 71119. So I apologize for that, because, see, I don't visit you very much down here. I only come every now and then. But what I wanted to say is that I want to thank you all for doing what you have done at the beginning of the year when you voted unanimously about the cell phones in school. You all was together on that. The students, they appreciate it eventually. The teachers and the staff, I know that they appreciate it, but you're really helping our children. And that's what it's all about. We have to help our children, and thank each and every one of you all for working as a team. When you work as a team, you do wonderful things, and I appreciate you so much. Thank you, and I yield my other time.
Good morning. Roy Griggs, 10901 Sanctuary, Shreveport, Louisiana, 71101. Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to share my perspective. And I want to say to you, I appreciate you for your willingness to serve. I appreciate you for your commitment, and I believe in you that we're here because we believe in our children, who's our future. I believe that. And I know right now it doesn't maybe feel that way, and I must admit too, I'm not pleased with the process here, what has happened here. But I support schools, I support this community as a business owner, as a resident here. But I want to make it clear here, I support Keith Burton. I'm just a little ticked by the process here. And let me tell you why, because we go back 20 years without knowing Keith Burton, who was principal of South Holland. And I have 6 grandchildren that lived here. 5 went through South Holland. 2 of my kids had difficult struggling in learning. We didn't know at the time what the issue was. Working with Keith and his staff there, we found that those twin boards, was just like issue learning. They helped us through that process, finding tutoring to help those kids get through that process and teaching us about that, I'll say, illness or disease. And today I stand to tell you, 20 plus years later, those 2 boys graduated from Louisiana Tech's degree in engineering, and they're doing extremely well. But they got that foundation from the schools here in Shreveport. I believe in Shreveport. I believe in us. We have to find a way to come together. We are better when we work together. And I know we'll get back there because I believe in you. I believe in the system. I believe in this community here. We'll find a way to get through these difficult times here. But let's not lose sight of who can best lead us there. I believe in Keith. Like I said, I met him when we served in South Holland. He embodied the spirit, he has integrity, and the leadership and the skill to move us forward. So just keep that in mind as we go through this process today. I'm committed, however this process ends, I am not going to back away from the school system. I'm going to support, as I've done for the past 27 years. I will continue to support and do whatever I can to make this community a better place to live and work. This is my home now. I've been here 27 years. Thank you for your time, and thanks for letting me share.
Good morning. Good morning. My name is Joe Argent Jr., pastor of Calvary Missionary Baptist Church for 51 years. Address 5823 Ledbetter Street. I've served on 2 previous searches for superintendents for Caddo Parish. During those processes, we had the opportunity to meet with various members of our constituency and get input from all parts of our community. It bothers me that that process was not used this time because I don't think it was as open as it should have been. I agree with the speaker, the principal who came before me, and said that both of his heroes in Caddo Parish superintendents were black. His statement was they were from the community who understand the needs of the community. That's one of my problems now. Our school system is over 70% black. We need some, not any dispersion on Mr. Burton, but unless you have walked in where we've walked, you've lived the way we lived, you don't quite understand what's happening with these children when they come to school. We need somebody who can understand, who can empathize with them. I submit to us, and I agree with what Pastor Dennis Everett said in a previous meeting, having served as our chief academic officer for better than 10 years, he's part of the problem. And how can we expect him to solve the problem that he was over in supervising? Also, it was mentioned about his experience by our speaker. His experience was in elite schools, not in our schools in our communities that's failing. You put anybody in an elite school, they can do good. But what can they do in those that are failing? And let me say this to you. If he didn't have the answers then, what make you think he'll do anything differently now? I close by saying to you, those of you who sit on the school board, I don't care whether you're black, white, polka dot, you have the opportunity to either pull this community together or to push it apart. It's up to you.
Good morning, School Board. I appreciate this opportunity to talk. My name is Allison Hammond, 9333 Stonebriar Circle, 71115. I sent each of you an email with a letter. 3 of you responded, and I appreciate that. I am here because I have a high-stakes interest, as we all do, in who our next superintendent of Caddo schools will be. I retired after 29 years in Caddo schools, and I have a child who attends a Caddo school. I cannot unknow what I know, and that's why I'm here. What I mean by that is I was fortunate enough as assistant principal of instruction to be part of a school-wide team who brought our school from a D to a B. That was in spite of, not because of. I went to a K-8 school on the middle school side, not having any experience with middle school, but I took the philosophy that we'd had at our successful school. We raised scores on that middle school side. That was in spite of, not because of. Because what we did, and it's working against the grain, is we used data. And that's the component that I'm not seeing here with this process. You have to look at the data. take your feelings out of it. You have to. Let the data speak, because we're at a crossroads. If we take this route, which it looks like is the route that the board may possibly be getting ready to go in, you're saying, I'm looking at the data and I'm choosing to put in place someone who has been in charge of academics for 10 years as we sit with 40+% of schools with D's and F's, and that's good enough? That is not good enough. I'm asking you, take your feelings out of it. If you're forced to look at the data, and let's say the name was highlighted out and you were only looking at the data, there is no way that you would say, hey, I think the next best person to lead Caddo schools is someone who has been running second in command to the superintendent with 40+% D's and F's. Guys, I don't accept my daughter to score 40% on her work, and I certainly do not accept my daughter to bring home grades where 40% of her grades are D's and F's. So I do not expect it from someone to lead the charge of all of our next students. Guys, we deserve better. Go back and look at the data. Let your data drive the decision. It's okay. You will have the respect of the community if you put the brakes on and seek out the next best person. We could go down the road and continue down this path, because if it was able to be done, a school can get raised in 3 years. If someone's not raising it, you've got to have someone with the courage to say, you're not doing it, we need someone else. If you take this new path, this is new opportunities, you've got a chance to really change it to all schools being successful. Thank you for your time.
Good morning, Dennis R. Everett, Senior, 3107 Country Club Drive, 71109. Thank you for the privilege to be able to speak today. There was a line in a song called The Manuscript that says, the professor said, write what you know, looking backward might be the only way to go forward. I use that line today because I think in order for us to go forward, we need to look at what happened in the back, in the past. I graduated from high school in Caddo Parish in 1967, 1 year before segregation of schools. The challenge was basically, how do you bring two unequal school system masquerading as one into one? We've not done a good job at doing that. What we've done is we've had some districts and some schools that we have made sure will not close, while at the same time we have caused others to close. Mr. Burton, and I don't know him personally, but I agree with all of the other speakers who said perhaps it was a good principle, but as head of academics, he has not done a good job. In fact, it is my opinion that he had the title of chief academic officer, but he was really superintendent. Many of the things that I attended where the superintendent should have been there, Mr. Burton was there. All you have to do is read what Keel says when they get ready to interview to find out what Caddo Parish is doing. Mr. Burton has been the voice. The problem is 80% of the children in Caddo Parish, they are the minorities. But yet, at the same time, we have an apartheid system. Apartheid is where the minority rules. And that's basically what you've done, and you do that because I think it was C.S. Lewis that says that the greatest evil is not done by men with guns, but it is done by men with suits who sit behind desks, which says the greatest evil is not the young people on our streets, they're not the young people in our schools, but it's the men and women who sit behind these desks in dresses and in suits. We have a system in Caddo Parish where our schools are oppressed And the only way that the oppressor can have as much power as they have is that they have cooperation from some people who are also oppressed. There is nothing wrong with putting the brakes on the process, rethinking it, because as an elected official...
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Willie Bradford, 3026 Independence Avenue, Shreveport, 71109. I did not attend the previous board meeting regarding the superintendent selection process, but I did go back to review the tape of the meeting. People after people came before you and expressed their disappointment with you choosing to select only one of the 6 candidates. Their collective sentiments appear to me to fall on deaf ears. They only ask that you would reconsider and allow other candidates to be interviewed. After spending over $70,000 to a firm to conduct a superintendent search, it seemed like a pretty reasonable request from citizens of this community. Madam President, I was a previous city councilman. I served with those 2 distinguished persons over there. I can say without reservation that our intent as public servants was to always show fairness. We always, regardless of our differences, we tried to show fairness. Because showing fairness is always the right thing to do. You don't have to explain or be ashamed of yourself if people know that you're being fair. Allowing other candidates to be interviewed was the fair thing to do. It is truly your prerogative to select the candidates, but a competition of interviewing other candidates would allow you to ascertain their qualifications as well. And if Mr. Burton was the best qualified of those candidates, who could argue with your decision? But we needed to know that others had opportunity to express what they feel they could offer Caddo Parish School Board. A institution whose preview is to show fairness is unfair. You can demand fairness in the classrooms, but you cannot demonstrate fairness in this boardroom. That's not fair. I appeal to you today that you have an opportunity to show fairness by allowing other candidates to come before you, to come before this community and offer themselves and show why they can be the best candidate. I offer you that you do that. And remember, not only are we looking, the students are looking as well. Thank you.
Good morning. Tabitha Taylor, 5714 Woodridge Drive, and I'm not coming to you as the councilwoman. I'm coming to you as an aunt, because now I find myself going through this process again with my nephews. So I'm sitting at home and I'm doing homework. And one of the things that I had was the opportunity to attend my nephew's back-to-school night. And in attending his back-to-school night, the teacher explained to us the processes of what he would have to do in order to reach this level. So I say to you today, if my nephew has to follow a process in order to achieve, why do you feel that you don't have to? The message that you send to your constituency, they are crying out to you. I am asking you as a constituent here, I am asking my board member who represents me to reconsider this process. This is not, I'm not here to attack Mr. Burton. I don't even know him. I don't know the man. What I am looking at is the fact that you all spent $70,000 of our money and you said that you were going to do this process and that this process should be enacted. I, with Pastor Gant, sat on 2 superintendent searches. We had the opportunity to go and to meet the individuals that were going to be representing us. And you cannot discount that. You cannot discount the cries and the pleas of the people that you represented. Because as they knocked, now I'm the councilwoman, and as they knocked on our doors, and we knocked on their doors, we said, this is what we're going to do. We raised our hand and we took an oath. And we said that we were going to follow that. And I am asking you today to reconsider this process. And it is within your power to do so.
Jordan Thomas, 1726 Line Avenue, Shreveport, Louisiana, 71101. I'm the Executive Vice President of Red River United. We know you have a huge responsibility to pick the right person to lead this very diverse district. You have over 30,000 students and over 5,000 employees who are depending on you to make the very best choice. That decision is so important that it must rise above personalities and politics. Our district deserves that. And let us also be clear and remind you that this must not be used as a time to make arbitrary decisions regarding the funds of this district without the input of our next superintendent. So we implore you to continue to set your sights on the most competent person to fill the role of superintendent and to keep your eyes on that and only that until this is done, because the students, faculty, staff, and community deserve nothing less. Thank you for your time and for your service.
Craig Lee, 1112 Prospect Street, Shreveport, Louisiana. Malcolm X once said that education is our passport to the future, for tomorrow belongs to the people who prepare for it today. The best indicator of future performance is past performance. Now, when the school board member, Don Little, was first running for school board, he and I shared some commonality because he was, or I don't know if he still is, pharmaceutical sales rep, and I was a pharmaceutical sales rep. And in pharmaceutical sales or any sales position, you have to perform. And in performing, you're given a certain amount of goals. And guess what happens when you don't achieve those goals? You get fired. It's really that simple. In bureaucracy, it doesn't work that way, though. See, in the private sector, it's about performance, and in the public sector, it's about bureaucratic favors. And in bureaucratic favors, people can not perform and still keep jobs. And this is where nepotism and cronyism actually come in, because that's what we're really dealing with here today. And so within this overall dynamic, what anybody who votes today to allow this process to continue, you definitely should resign, because what you're saying to the children of this city, of this parish, is that education doesn't matter. You want to say that education matters, but only it matters when it is politically convenient for you to say so. But when it's not convenient for you to do so, you now roll with your nepotistic and cronyistic politics. That is the reality of this situation. I have nothing against Mr. Keith Burton. But at the end of the day, when you have a situation where you have 5 qualified candidates, better qualified than the one that you all want, what are you really saying? And it's right in your face. And Mr. Little knows how this works in the private sector, because you cannot keep a job if you don't perform. And that's what we're dealing with right now. An individual who has not performed in 10 years wanting to be elevated to this particular process. And this board has a decision to do the right thing or the wrong thing. The world is watching. And lastly, the core essence of economic development revolves around public schooling. See, y'all don't get it, The reason that you can't increase salaries is because the population has diminished, and the population has diminished because our public schools are trash.
Marvin Muhammad, 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, Washington, D.C. 20050. There's 35,000 students approximately in Caddo Parish. Of that amount, 66% or 23,100 are African American. Of that amount, which comes out to and this is actually sad, because I believe she said the data. The data says that 70%, according to LEAP 25, or 16,170 students, African American students, are either achieving unsatisfactory, approaching basic, or basic. There's only 5 levels of performance in Caddo Parish, the other 2 being advanced and mastery. In other words, 70% of African American students in Caddo Parish is either approaching basic, unsatisfactory, or basic. And under the chief academic officer, he has failed. There was a criterion that was put out that this board has failed. That rubric. What was that rubric? The rubric was, 1, there should be a visionary leader. And in that, they talked about character and integrity. This is the rubric y'all put out there. Well, my question is, it was alleged that Keith Burton, and this is under the context that in the last year, there have been gross indictments, arrests, firing, misappropriation of funds of administrators under his care. But it was also alleged that under his watch, that he gave magnet tests to parents at magnet schools so they could have an advantage. I want to know, is that true? Would the board ask Mr. Burton that question in this interview process? Since that's a part of the rubric that y'all spoke about. The second one is that he has to be a communicator, inclusive. Well, I don't see an inclusive. I don't see where the vast majority of the population of Caddo Parish is being included in this thing. In a 27-page document that was published by the search team, 49% of them were parents
Thank
of
you, sir.
students. My 3 minutes is up?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. I'm going to be short and sweet. Omari Hossein, 4646 Hillary Huckabee III, Shreveport, Louisiana 71107. Before I begin, I just want to name 6 schools, and I just want us to think about the difference between these 6 schools. You got South Highlands, Caddo Middle Magnet, and Caddo Magnet High. And then on the other end, we have Sunset Acres, Warner Park, and Moortown. What are the differences and similarities between these 6 schools? I'll help. One is magnet schools, the other are closed schools, schools that have in fact been closed in the past decade. So today, as you take decisive action to interview the lone finalist of this process, it is clear that it is many members' prerogative to interview and then hire today's candidate. I think it helps to mention that our focus has always been about the process and not the person. But this process has been unfair, it has been improper, and to date, the vetting and the substantive review of all of the candidates is incomplete. Your prerogative costs money. Your prerogative harms any and all candidates involved in this iteration of the selection process, including the one that you may hire today. Your prerogative closes schools and has invited foreign entities to dictate the educational paths of our students. Your prerogative has caused dissension and division at a time that so delicately writes our destiny, and it did not have to be. We are asking that members of this board delay the process and make it right for everybody you've harmed. The harm brought on by prioritizing your power and your prerogative over the people and the children. We expect our children to do their homework, so we expect the same of our school board members. Please delay this decision. Thank you.
Alfonso Williams, 2410 Winbrook Court, Shreveport, Louisiana. There's some acronyms that one of my mentors, the late David Bryant, taught me. It's called KISS, and it says keep it simple, stupid. So I'm gonna keep it simple. It's really simple. Just vote not to hire him and redo the process. It's simple. That's all we're asking. Just keep it simple. KISS. So before I leave, I'm gonna blow a kiss to everybody. Keep it simple. Thank you.
Good morning. Roy Carey, 6056 Greenwood Road, Shreveport, Louisiana, 71119. I'll start not say anything because I expressed my expressions on last week. First, let me just say something to this board. I'm very turned off by the way you treat taxpayers who you represent, who come down to voice their opinion about their children and our children. I served on the city council. When an issue was as important as the issue is about our children, we allowed people to speak, and if the time even ran out, one of us would make a motion and say, I yield my time, give the speaker some more time. Ms. Bell, you always say our babies. Our babies are important to us if they're not important to you. I submit to you, what's the rush? What decision that's going to be made today or whenever you make it is going to affect our children for the next 30 years. Think about that. I've heard that some of you saying, well, I don't have but a few more years. Well, your legacy is going to follow you. What you do for our children and our grandchildren is going to leave this city to either fail or succeed. The next thing I want to say, what does it say about Caddo Parish when you put out a search for a superintendent and there are 6 other more qualified candidates and you don't even interview them? Serving on the city council, we hired people from all over the United States because we were not looking for a friend. We were looking for who was best to serve that position. And I submit to you that there are some candidates that are as good or better to serve in the capacity of this superintendent. The other thing I want to say is that Mr. Little said the other day, I was watching the news, Mr. Little said, yes, I observed the process was kind of fast and it kind of caught me off guard, but we got 13 letters of recommendation and blah, 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 and went on to say, I understand 13 letters of recommendation when you only have one candidate, but what would have occurred if the public, and there was transparency, and the public would see that we gave all the candidates fairness? I think it snubs Shreveport, it snubs Caddo Parish for us to do it, and when we get down the road and get ready to hire another candidate, something should or may happen to the candidate is selected, and you have to go out and do this search again. There are going to be some very qualified people who are going to say, I'm not going. I've seen what they did in the last process, and I'm not in that political mess.
Finally, I want to say,
Thank you, sir.
be fair. Be fair. Be fair for our babies.
Is there anybody else that would like to make a comment?
Excuse me. Good morning, everybody. My name is Angelica Walters, 6600 Virgo Drive, Shreveport, LA, 71119. I don't have children, but I do have concerns. My mother always told me if you stand for something, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. And right now, in my generation's term, y'all are tripping. In the real world, you get fired for underperforming in jobs, but in this instance, we are rewarding stagnancy, my bad, sorry. Caddo Parish has not grown, let's call a spade a spade. Our lower income communities are suffering and babies are at the forefront of it all. We have nothing in our neighborhoods anymore, and that's the board's fault. You need to take a look at yourself and ask, who are we really working for? Because it's not your community. Your community is showing concerns, and you sit at your horseshoe and act as if you're high and mighty. You're showing us that you don't care and that you're not working for us but against us. We just want to ensure a fair process. We want representation for all. And we want to ensure not equality but equity for all schools. That means meeting people on their level and giving them what they need in order to ensure fairness for the whole process. So I really want y'all to think about that. You had a whole board of people here like last week, and I'm pretty sure that's the most people that's been in this board in a minute. I just want y'all to care about your community because your community is crying and saying, we need y'all. Please show us that you're with us and not against us. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to speak?
James Green, 4101 Evers Drive. I sat there and I listened and I watched. I heard the principal from Northwood say about his heroes. But his heroes did not just get the job handpicked. They had to go through a process. They didn't say, well, they from our community, they went through a process. I watched this board take a school in Stony Hill and make it what they want. I watched this board take a school in the middle of Cedar Grove and make it safe. I've watched this board bus children to Herndon High School in Belcher and close schools in Shreveport, but we are still busing. I watch this board, we buy what we want and beg for what we need, and I just think that it's very unfair that you all would circumvent the process just to get who you want. If you had wanted him from the start, I have nothing against. Just tell us instead of spending $75,000 or $70,000 to get from one process to another. But I watched you all, how you all transact business, that in our neighborhoods are dying. You want to know why? Because you all have voted to close all of the neighborhood schools. When there are no schools, neighborhoods die. So is there a hidden agenda that you all have to cause our neighborhoods to be as they are? When I hear fairness, just be fair. Well, that only counts when it's on the other side. I don't want fair. I want favor. I don't just want favor. I want uncommon favor for our children. I hear people talk about it's about the kids. Is it really about the kids? Because if the kids doesn't pass their test, they can't go to the next grade. So how do you take a person who has been over the academics? We have flight from Shreveport to Bossier because they say Bossier have the better schools. So why don't we do what Bossier do, seek out the best, that we can have the best for our kids, to give them not just fair, not just favor, but to give them uncommon favor.
Are there any more comments? Second time. Any more comments?
Curtis Hooks, 3309 Sun Valley Court, Shreveport, Louisiana. I heard y'all trying to, I have not heard not one person, not one, put the blame on the home. That's your first school. When I was coming up, that was my first school. My dad and my brother taught me how to read and taught me how to count. You can't blame Keith Burton or all these people around this horseshoe because home are not doing their duty. Home. Say what? Hold the clock. Did I call your name? Say what now?
Mr. Hooks.
I didn't call anybody's name. So you must be guilty. No.
Mr. Hooks, just look at us and talk.
All right, I'm looking at you. But I want to let these people know, and I have to look at them. Everybody in this room.
Yes, sir. They can hear you.
Huh?
They can hear you. You can talk to me.
Well, anyway, I came down here and asked you all, when I first found out about Dr. Goree leaving, to suspend the superintendent search and told you not to waste the taxpayers' money. But you went on with it. Now, the only reason I came down here because God sent me down here. I didn't want to come. God sent me down here. I didn't want to be a school board member, but God was the one that wanted me on the board, and he said, I want you to serve one term. And I did. Now, what we have to look at is we don't want to make this out of racial situation. My voice is for Keith Burton. And God turned your hearts around. I had a minister at church, and I was upset about this. I felt like y'all should have gone through the process. You should have gone through the process. But since you didn't, you did not go. So this minister preached about you got to make a U-turn. So that night when y'all said that we're going to interview Keith Burton, you made your U-turn. God spoke to you all. Pastor Bray preached about one Sunday, a young babe.
Thank you, sir. Any more comments?
Jerry Moore, 4127 Palomino Drive, 71107. I just want to say that it's been a privilege to come in and see the process and to listen at the council members and so forth. So I say to you, coming from the Cover Road, Green Oaks, Newton Smith, Pine Grove area, how can we honestly have 3 elementary schools, now 2 of them closed? At one point, Green Oaks was on the chopping block. Okay. We had the first black mayor come out of Green Oaks. So, at one point, the second largest community in the United States. Black community, I'm sorry. And not to make it a black or white thing, but at this point, I listened to the speaker before me, and it's time, I just want to say one thing. It's time for you all to wake up! Because at this point, we're not going to have it. That's all I have.
Visitor section's now closed. Ms. Tharp.
Madam President, I move that we go into executive session to interview candidate Keith Burton for the position
You
of
go, push your
Superintendent of Caddo Parish Public Schools. Can I make that motion?
Ms. McLean.
Second.
Ms. Bell.
I move for a substitute motion, and it's going to be 2. And I've heard the board members, I've worked hard with you, I've heard the parents. My substitute motions, and I don't know if I'm legal with these, my first substitute motion is that I feel that I voted that we should have, let me make the motion is this, that, and I'm going to say this, that we need to go and do what we need to do is, and let me get it straight, that the substitute motion.
Ms. Bell, you need a motion before
I'm finna
you
make it.
discuss it. Okay.
Okay, didn't discuss, okay. My motion is that we go back and do the process of having to interview the 3 top ones that we voted for. Number 2, my second motion is that if that failed today, that we have the interview open where the public will hear what we're asking the lone candidate.
Second, we need to have a second. It's right here. No. Point of parliamentary procedure.
Okay.
Can you make 2 motions? Just one.
Just one at a time? Okay, my first one is that we go back and do the process, and it was, now let me get this straight. We did not have in our process that we would interview 3 or 4. We didn't say that. But I'm asking that we go back and get the top 3 that we voted for and bring them back in and have them interviewed. That's my thing.
I second that.
Okay.
That motion's out of order.
Is that order? Okay.
There is no notice to the public that we are changing and deciding that we are going to do a different process. It is not on the agenda. The only way that you can add an item like that would be to have unanimous vote by the board in order to do this. And you have to give the public an opportunity to discuss it, okay?
Did everybody hear that? Okay.
The board can vote to change the process, but it has to be noticed, okay?
And 24
The only
hours?
thing on the agenda today is to interview a person.
Okay.
Okay? The motion could be to not interview today because it is on the agenda. But to say that you're going to interview 3 other people or 2 other people or whatever number of people is a different motion, okay? And so that, you can make that motion, but that would require unanimous vote in order to add it to the agenda, okay? Otherwise, we have we've got
Okay, let me ask you a
violation
question.
of open meetings.
If I ask for that vote and it failed, I will come back with my second, I can come back with my second motion, right? And then I have something to add to that. Okay, let's do the first one, okay? Okay, I'm gonna ask.
Okay, Ms. Bell, to get it correct. In order to do this, you have to have a motion to add it to the agenda that you do this, okay?
Okay, I like to make a motion to add it to the agenda that we consider in the process of bringing back, am I doing right? Bring it back. 3 only.
Is all, can we move to postpone this particular meeting so we can get this straight?
What you mean postpone what?
What I mean is, what I'm saying is because I don't, I guess my just request to you is to postpone this particular process.
That should be a motion first.
Okay.
Before you argue it.
Okay.
Okay, he can override my motion.
Mr. Little.
Okay.
I'm calling a point of order because there's conflicting motions on the floor. This motion has to be addressed before anything else can be discussed.
I'm trying to get it addressed.
Okay, point of order.
I do that?
You can
Ms.
withdraw
Bell,
it.
all I'm asking you is to withdraw your initial motion and to put forth a motion to postpone these interview today whereby we can put everything in the proper motion, give the public 24-hour notice, and move forward with the process, because that's all we have to do is have a special call meeting with 24 hours notice, and your motion can be put on the agenda where the public can speak out.
But if my motion fail, that means nothing. I'm still going to say. Now, what you're saying to me is, okay, I don't have a motion yet. I don't need.
You do have a motion. It's
Okay,
been
wait just a
seconded.
minute. You were saying that my motion is.
Please
my
let the
motion-
board conduct business.
My motion is.
This is your warning, first warning. Please stop.
My motion is that I'm gonna say it again. Will you, put on the agenda, right, Mr. Abram?
Okay, did you get a second to add it to the agenda?
Add it to the agenda, what?
Darren did.
He just added, he just seconded.
No, he
Okay,
already did a long time ago.
Postpone.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So what?
Postpone.
That's not what she's got on the floor.
You got that motion.
I'm going to withdraw that motion. And I'm going to say, I'm going to withdraw it and postpone the interviews today, and go into what? A special meeting? That's what you're saying, Mr.? I want to make sure I'm getting it right. Special meeting where we discuss.
Ms. Bell?
Okay, yes,
This is a
sir.
motion to postpone.
Okay, oh, I think I do that first, huh?
Just make a motion to
I
postpone.
move that we postpone that motion.
I second that motion.
Okay, then, now.
Okay. Any discussion? Don't talk anymore about that.
I'm done about that, but I'm coming with another that I'm working.
No,
Oh, okay.
no, you're not.
Oh, I'm through with it? Oh, okay. Okay.
Do you have anything else you want to say about postponing the meeting?
Oh, yes, I do.
Then you need to say it now.
That I'd like to, board members, I'd just like for us to consider what was said. And let us go into a meeting and give 24-hour notice about the meeting, right? And say, look, and talk about it. The community is speaking. Nobody's talking about the candidate. They're talking about, and let me tell you, I've been on this board 18 years. I've had 3 superintendents. Every one of them had open interview, and we've had more than one. Not one did we do it, and I can name them. So I'm saying it's not a problem. We need, and I agree, we need to interview more than one. And we sit there and did the rubric, and the top 3 is the one. And like you say, we spent $70,000, well, let's get ready to spend some more to bring them in. Is this what the community want? And we go on and interview. That's all I'm saying. But I've done this before, and I'm sure some other board members have done it also, and we've interviewed others. So that's what my thing is, that we do 24 hours, we put the notice out there, right, Mr.? Yeah, okay, I'm through.
Mr. Dixon?
I guess I concur with that. I couldn't quite follow everything. But you know, my hesitancy is the fact that there's a lawsuit that we're aware of, or injunction that has been filed, that didn't get the restraining order, but is still set to be heard on the 17th, which could overthrow or overrule anything we do today. So I think it's just prudent to kind of see what the judge says, if our actions are indeed proper in accordance to his rulings, and then move forward. But I do concur that, and I've been solid on this. I thought we could have interviewed more. I think cream rises to the top. I heard that. So if interviewing other folk, if Mr. Burton was the best, then so be it. But we'll never get to know that, because we never would have talked to anybody but him. So I concur with Ms. Bell's motion.
Dr. Dozart?
So that we're clear, what is the motion on the table?
To
I heard a lot.
postpone.
The motion is only to postpone. It does not add anything about
No.
a 24-hour notice and all the rest of this stuff, okay? That's required by law. The motion is to postpone at this point, period.
Correct.
The interview process, okay? All right, that's the motion.
Dr. Dozart?
Thank you, Madam President. I had already asked Madam President to let me speak after the visitors, and I'm still going to repeat a few of the things. It's good when you can get a student to teach you to put on brakes. And I tried my best prior to September the 11th, 2024. I tried my best to have another meeting that would include 2 or more individuals, but it failed. And I'm still trying, and I'm still going to do all I can to help others. Thank you.
Mr. Schmel.
Every now and then you get lost words, but you know from the very beginning where I've stood with this. And I've been trying to get an understanding with the members of this horseshoe. I think that we have moved so fast, we've overlooked several steps in the process. I know when you got the majority in your favor, you got the ruling point. So this is one of the things that we have to look at. But one thing I think that we should be clear on, that we are listening to the community. We have not really given them all the things that we've done in previous interviews or previous meetings as it relates to a lot of the stuff that we received as information as board came after the fact. You didn't know what was going to happen. You got the information and then you had to deal with it. But I'm not at that point anymore. I'm just at a point where I feel like we need to stop this process, and we need to stop it today. We need to make sure we're going to have at least 2 other candidates to come in. And the reason for it is to show them that we hear what you're saying, we understand what you're saying, and this is what the board is going to do, not 6 people that look like me and 6 people that look different. I just feel like this board needs to come to a common agreement that this is what we're going to do. We don't have to roll into this fast, even if the person that you got in your mindset that we want this person to be the superintendent, let's bring him in a fashionable manner that we all understand that we went through the process to get it done. Now, that's all. I've been that way since the beginning, so let's just see.
Ms. Green.
Okay, so I understand that we're just postponing now. And this is, to postpone just means we won't interview today. And so when we come, so when will we come? I just want to be clear on what's going to happen. Mr. Attorney, maybe you can help me because I'm sure I'm going to have some questions after I leave here today.
Motion to postpone.
It has to be unanimous.
And say that again, Madam President?
The motion has to be unanimous, correct?
Oh, okay.
No.
No?
Not on a motion to postpone.
It's just a ruling majority.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So to postpone and then we come back or let me know.
The motion itself is to postpone without a date, so it doesn't have a date.
Okay.
With that motion.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Little.
Thank you, Madam President. I understand the sentiment behind wanting to postpone, but in my view, this is to improve the optics. The mechanics of this process were followed to a T. And the candidate that was selected had nearly twice the score of the second candidate.
Yes.
And in the business, we have people talking about in the business world, when this happens, you don't go through political theater to pretend like other candidates have an option. I understand why we're doing this, but I think it's a foregone conclusion as to who will be selected, and I hate to put the other candidates through this process. It seems to be unfair to them, and it seems to be an exercise to save political face rather than to focus on what's best for our community.
Ms. Bell.
All that I'm asking, and I think the other colleagues asking, that we interview more candidates.
That's not what you're asking.
I mean, I'm asking to postpone. The reason I'm saying postpone, because the community is saying, and we saying it too, I said, I voted no. that we needed to interview more than one. It's just like I'm getting ready, if I apply, in fact, let me use me. I'm sure when I was elected 5 times, I've had 4 people to run against me. I had to get out there and tell them what I was going to do. So the same thing that I'm saying, only asking that we postpone and come back where we will be able to interview more than one. That's what it's all about. And we will talk to the attorney about how we would do this, the time and what. Postpone the process right now, the interviews.
Mr. Rachel.
Thank you, Madam President. And I don't know if we delay an interview, are we then going to change the process that we've put in place and have followed? Are we going to be changing the process again after we do any interviews? Is there going to be more changes in it? That's because I don't know that that's what we're doing at this point in time, is we're changing the process at this point in time. So anyway, is there going to be any additional changes if we make this change? Okay, well, it could certainly happen. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Umling.
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to say this board, from what I see and understand, we did follow a process. It did unanimously pick the best qualified person according to numbers. And now it looks as though this board is trying to play both sides of the political aisle for expediency to make both sides happy. Decisions are always made, and there's going to be those who disagree. And it appears that we're going backwards in order to appease both sides. And that's just not how it's done. I would like to see this board move forward. We made a selection, and it's time to put all that conspiracy theories that's flying around behind us and to close this matter. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Dr. Vincent.
I kind of was just listening and wanted to, I guess I'll go back to what my colleague, Mr. Dixon, said, that we do have some business we need to take care of next week. I think the practical thing to do is just simply wait until that's finalized. The most important point I do want to make, that hearing what Mr. Umling said, Board Member Umling said, the process was not followed. I have to say that. I read over the RFP several times. It was not followed. Many commentaries out there where we all said that it wasn't followed. At this point, I want to ask Mr. Abrams. Mr. Abrams, is this the process that was conducted and happened in the past, or is it a different process?
In the past, you're talking about prior searches?
Yes, sir.
There are lots of differences in the process as far as what was done last time versus this time.
Yes, sir. So that's simply what I want to highlight, not to get into a back and forth, you all, because I was here when Dr. Gorey was hired also. I know the public have input. This is a totally different process, you all. So that's all I want us to in addition to the process that the RFP outlined. Mr. Abrams, is that correct?
I don't have the RFP in front of me, but I can tell you that the process that was followed, it was followed, okay, as far as what the consultants intended to bring forward. The only distinguishing thing was that when there was the calculation in numbers, there was no vote by the board to say we're going to interview 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. There was a motion made that was passed that said that you were only going to interview one. That is still a part of the process, and that was followed.
Right, so you're saying that there was no steps within the process that was skipped?
I'm not giving you that opinion as to steps. The way it was done, there actually was, there was all portions of it, times and when times were changed, that was done. There was times that were changed, and throughout that time, there is not, those are not in the RFP, it's what time you do different things. That was all scheduled out over time, and it was followed based upon what was given and what the time frames that the group got together and they decided on when they were going to do it, when there was availability for buildings and where they were going to meet at. All that stuff was done on a schedule. So, and they also followed a process of using interviews by sending out the questionnaires. Those questionnaires were actually, assembled by the consultant. The consultant made reports based upon that were submitted to the board, and times certainly changed in between those. But they substantially complied with what they were asked to do. The only difference in this whole process was that there was a motion made after the calculation of the numbers to decide on one person instead of interviewing 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. There was never a motion by the board that established the number that would be interviewed. The motion was made and it was decided at the time that there would be a calculation. Everyone put their numbers in, went back, and the numbers were added up, and it came back to the board as to see what motions would be made as to who would be interviewed or not interviewed. And there was a motion that actually only had Mr. Burton on it as being the sole interview, and that was what was followed, and that's where the motion was passed 7-5.
Okay, yes, sir. 2 points, and I'm done, and we're going to vote. I just want to also, I'll make that last point, that point last. At one point in the RFP, it outlined that we will receive all applicants, correct?
No, that was never a part of that. The applications all went to the consultants. The consultants made a determination as to who were qualified candidates, and they made a determination as to those that would be sent. Those 6 were by them declared as being qualified and meeting all the qualifications in order to be superintendent. They submitted those on the date that was voted. Those were actually submitted after 6 o'clock on the day before. No one that I know of knew who those 6 applicants were, including myself. Those came out and they were distributed to the board.
Okay,
at that
Mr.
time,
Evans,
and
to
it was
save
put
us some
on the
time,
agenda.
to save us
Excuse
some
me.
time. Yes, sir, to save us some time.
Let
Hold
me
on one
finish.
second. Hold on one second. To save us some time, you all, I'm saying, you all, I've read the RFP, all 48 pages. It says that we should have received application packets for all 29 candidates. So I'm imploring to you that part of the process was skipped. It's our jobs, you all, not the search firm, to hire. That's our job, responsibility, not the search firm. We can't appropriately do that without reviewing the applications. So again, I just want to throw that out there for your own thoughts. This is not me against you. That's common. That's our responsibility. I've sat on several search committees. I can't just skip the people that have submitted their applications. That's not fair. Lastly, I'll say this. In my scoring, because I need every board member to hear this, and I wasn't planning to say any of this, I gave each candidate the top score. It was put out, I gave them zeros. I was asked by the search firm and our attorney to change my score because I couldn't give everybody ones. I would have outscored all of you all. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 adds up to 21 points. I would have had 36. I believe each candidate, we all should have had a total of 36 points. So again, you all, I'm imploring to you, it's not that hard for us to just take a reset and move forward. Thank you.
Mr. Little.
Thank you, Madam President. I have more of a parliamentary question here. As I understand it, only the chair or the superintendent, in this case the acting superintendent, can set agendas for meetings. And my concern is if we've delayed the meeting, which is the
that's not
motion that's on the
correct.
floor.
That is in between board meetings.
Pardon?
That's in between board meetings. At the time after the executive committee meets and the next board meeting, that's who add items to the agenda. The superintendent or the board president.
So just to clarify, if there is a motion to postpone that is passed today, anyone can add an agenda item for the next meeting. So someone can add an agenda item
No.
to interview three candidates.
That's not the board rules.
Okay, so the concern is if we postpone this meeting and either the superintendent or the chair do not allow three candidates to be interviewed, we've now put ourselves in a situation where we're at deadlock. And if you recall what happened in Baton Rouge, it was such a dumpster fire. The board acted so unprofessionally that the state superintendent had to step in. I'm just afraid that we may be stepping in that direction because there is a possibility that this does not get on the agenda and we have suspended the process.
Yeah. First of all, the state superintendent, there's a different issue there, and that was that Baton Rouge was past that, I believe they were past that 6-month period they had to select an interim, from what I understand. So we're not in that situation.
So it's only based on timeline? Is that the only concern? Because as I understand, our acting superintendent, October 1st is the last day.
No. It's a 6-month period, and that person
Okay.
can serve as the superintendent. I haven't looked at the dates to see what it was, but I don't believe it ends on October 1st.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Bell?
All I need to say is that in the last, with Dr. Dawkins, we postponed our whole search and started over again and go back and get the research. So I just want to make, it was postponed and we started over again. That's all I need to say.
Let's vote to postpone. Yes, ma'am.
Fails.
What happened?
It failed.
It failed?
No, that's going out. Okay.
Mr. Mel? Mr. Mel?
I'm just trying to make sure I understand. Can we have, before I start the meeting? You ready? Madam Chair, I would like to ask that we'd have a 15-minute recess, please.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
We're back in recess. Christine Thart.
Yes, Madam President, I'd like to remove my motion to go into executive session.
Ms. McLean.
Just so I have clarification from Mr. Abrams, if I remove my second to go into executive session, then the interview would then just be an open session, is that correct?
Mr. Abrams.
Yes, that's correct. I want to be clear with the public. This is an interview, so this is not standard as far as anyone actually heckling or making comments. This needs to be fair process for the interviewee. So therefore, there's going to be next to zero tolerance for anyone commenting and making comments about the responses. The questions that we have are provided by the consultants. No one on this board has seen any of these questions that are going to be submitted. I'm going to hand them to the board members, and they'll each have a question that they will ask, okay? And so therefore, that's the process that we'll be using. But because you're going to be here, this person, Mr. Burton, and any other person who's being interviewed is trying to give their best response to whatever question is being asked. And therefore, should not have any comments from the public as to his response, okay? Someone going to get Mr. Burton?
Hold on. Don't go get him yet. Dr. Vincent.
Yeah, I'm confused because it says we were going into executive session. We changed it. Yeah, well.
That motion was withdrawn, but if someone else wants to make that motion, they can.
Yeah, what I'm saying, my point of order is, that's what was on the agenda, and we're changing it now, so I'm a little confused.
It's on the agenda, the motion, it's always on the agenda whenever the consideration is going into an executive session. The interview is what the process is. That's on the agenda.
It says executive session, interview candidate Keith Burton for the position of superintendent of Caddo Parish Schools.
And the law requires that you have a 2/3 vote in order to do that. Somebody going to make that motion?
Well, no, what I'm saying is, say that again, sir? I'm sorry.
The state law requires that you have a 2/3 vote of the members that are present in order to go in executive session. The item is on the agenda for an interview of Mr. Keith Burton. You're giving notice to the public that you can go in executive session for that. The only way you can go into executive session is if you have 2/3 vote of the board to go into executive session. Now, you can go ahead and do that. That motion can be made and see if that motion passes.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mel.
So they're removing the motion to go into executive session, so this will be an open session
Correct.
for the interview that we have on the agenda.
If it does not go into executive session, it will be an open session.
So if we vote as according to the going into executive session and that fails, then where will we be?
You'll be in open session.
We'll be in
The
open
item is on
session.
the agenda already.
Okay, so we're following the item, this 1.05.
Correct.
So first
Okay.
we'll vote for that?
No, it's no
Mr.
vote.
Abrams?
Pardon?
No motion, so we're in open
Okay.
session.
You're in open session.
Okay.
At this point, you're still in open session. So you call the item. If no one's going to make a motion, go into executive session, you go forward with the item.
It's open meeting.
Mr. Little.
Madam Chair, move to executive session to interview candidate Keith Burton for the position of Superintendent of Caddo Parish Public Schools.
Dr. Dozart.
My name was up, it must have been up there from something else.
Does anybody want a second? Mr. Rachel. You were on, sorry. Hold on. Mr.
Second.
Rachel. So we'll vote to go into executive session.
It came up.
Oh, no.
You moved mine quick. It came up, it went off quick. Dollar.
Go up to the right, to the red.
I ain't changing no vote. It came up and I voted. You want to make sure you're right? I know, yeah. You do?
Then,
Click on the change. I want to change it now. We're just going to double check. Don't mess it up. I don't have to cut nobody up. We're just checking. Okay, all right. Just make sure you're confident.
click it one more time.
But it still won't come, okay.
There you go.
There you go. I didn't want to make sure it's there.
I just want to make sure you got what you want.
I got you, babe. Thank you, sweetie.
So now, oops, sorry. Now we will go into open session.
No, you
And I will-
remain in open session.
Oh, hold on. Mr. Rachel.
Actually, I guess it really, I don't know that it really makes, well, no, it does. I have a point of clarification on parliamentary rules, is that we have an executive session on the first Tuesday of every month, correct?
That's different. That's your executive committee meeting.
Okay,
It's not
okay.
executive
And so this executive session, we've done this many, many times in the past, and maybe we always had 2/3 vote at that point in time. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Give me just a minute.
I need to test. Yeah, it seems like. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing. Testing 1, 2, 3. I'm not going to do it. Out. Okay, that's fine.
Just make sure you're facing your mouth towards it.
Got it.
So go that way, we don't lose it.
Got it. Thank you.
Mr. Abrams.
So that everyone is aware, Mr. Burton has not seen these questions. No one from the board has seen these questions before this meeting. And the way it will work is that there will be, each school board member has been given a question. You'll see there's a section on here where it says criteria, like the first one talks about visionary leader, and it starts with board member Jasmine Green. You'll read the visionary leader part, then add your question right behind it, because that'll be first in the criteria, okay? And then we'll go to the next one, which will be about communicator, and Mr. Umling will have a question, followed by Ms. Bonita Dozart. Then you had the third one is problem solver. Ms. McLean will read the portion about problem solver, and then ask her question, followed by Dr. Vincent. Criteria on courage. Mr. Dixon will read that about courage, and then the question, and Ms. Stark behind that.
You said Dr. Vincent, but you didn't say Dr. Dozart.
I'm sorry, I thought I did. On criteria number 3, it'll be Ms. McLean will read the portion of problem solver and that part, and I'm sorry, I got that wrong. On the criteria number 2, Mr. Umling will read that portion about communicator, and then Dr. Bonita Dozart will read the next question. Criteria number 5, Ms. Trammell will read the portion about bridge builder, and then ask her question, and Don Little will follow. Then we'll have the section on background, which Mr. Rachal will read that portion, followed by Ms. Dottie Bell, who will do the closing. Those questions are all very specific, as provided by the consultant. So we'll proceed with that. Anyway, Ms. Yates, you'll start out with the welcome and the introductory question.
Welcome, Mr. Burton. Please tell us your background and experience that has prepared you to be the superintendent of Caddo Parish Public Schools, and why you want to be our next superintendent.
Thank you, President Yates, and to Vice President Bell and Superintendent Wolf. Let me first of all just start off and look each of you in the eye and tell you thank you very much for this opportunity. I do know that this is not an easy process. Anytime you have a superintendent selection, no matter what state we're in or no matter what part of Louisiana we're in, this is never easy. We've seen that recently in East Baton Rouge Parish, and we've seen it this morning. It's not easy for the community. It's not easy for the board, certainly not easy for candidates or their families. But why do I want to be superintendent? Really for one reason and one reason only, is because for the past 33 years I've invested just about everything I have, my time, my talent, my energy, into bettering the education of students in this district. I have served this community in every aspect, as my prospectus will show. You will see that I have not just started preparing to be superintendent a year or so ago. I really prepared for this job decades ago, and my service to this district can be seen. One of the things that I hope that you notice is in my 33 years of service to only Caddo Parish schools, I've always left a position better than I found it. When I was a teacher, my students improved. Matter of fact, I could put back in the day, my CAT scores or my LEAP performance scores in front of anyone. I was a grade level chair, and then one surprising day in an auditorium at an elementary school, I was shocked and surprised to become Louisiana's first National Milk and Educator Award. That's an award you can apply for. That's an award where they come and find you. And Louisiana had never had one before, and I was selected. And if you know anything about the Milken, it is basically the Academy Award for teaching. And from that, I was hired by Dr. Robert Schiller to be a principal in this district. And let me tell you, that process was almost as difficult as this one is, because Dr. Schiller's interview and process for selecting leaders was very difficult. But I became principal of an elementary school. At that point was a Title I school, and I served in that capacity, later went to another elementary school and ended at a middle school. And then for the last 11 years, I've served you as our Chief Academic Officer. And I'm very proud of our team's work and what we've accomplished, not for a certain group of kids, but for all kids in Caddo Parish. And because of that, I look forward to having the opportunity to share my plan and vision for you for superintendent.
Thank you. We will now put a 5-minute timer on the screen. And we will go to Ms. Green. Hold on, sorry.
Criteria number 1, the visionary leader. The superintendent should be a visionary, creative, and committed leader who will take the time to learn the district and get to know all of the stakeholders. The superintendent must develop a plan to compete the alternative educational offerings to move all schools and students to proficiency. The superintendent must love and advocate for all children and be the highest integrity and character while demonstrating a passion for education and be a team builder among all stakeholders. My question for you, Mr. Burton, is relate your past educational experiences, evaluating and developing strategic plans, and how you would build a team to include all stakeholders in the process of developing and implementing the strategic plan for Caddo Parish.
Thank you, Ms. Green. First of all, I think a strategic plan is simply this. That is as a board, and then as your leader, our mutually agreed upon priorities. What do we feel as a board do we do very well? And then what are those areas that we need to improve upon? That should drive, and really should only be the driving force of any strategic plan. It also should be one that we can pivot on very quickly, because the strategic plan for 2024 may be totally different than the priorities will be in 2026 or 2027. But you ask as far as my experiences. Well, first of all, I think anyone who's worked with me will say that one of my strengths is putting people around me who are outstanding. I would put my academic team, and matter of fact, the administrative teams that I've had the privilege of serving with at schools against anyone. Matter of fact, many of them are so highly rated, they're pulled from other, they're pulled from the state. Matter of fact, I think just the other day, Ms. McLean asked a question about a recommendation that we were bringing from the academics, and I had to explain to her that we're having to fill that position because that person now leads the math work for the state because of her outstanding work here in this district. So I build teams, and by the way, I also move people around. If you are not, and I'm not afraid to restructure an organization if it's not meeting the needs of our school district. I did that in our professional development department. It was isolated, it was in a separate building, and it was away from curriculum. And one of the things that I did very quickly when I became Chief Academic Officer was integrate that so that we would not be siloed. So as far as building a team and focused on strategic plan, we will do that, and we will also report to you and make it a simple process. One of the things that I want to encourage is a public dashboard where all of us at any time, you shouldn't have to wait for an outside evaluator to come in and give you a report on how we are doing on the metrics that we're saying is important. You should be able to wake up in the morning, click on a website, and be able to transparently see the progress that we're making or the areas that we're struggling in. Because at that point, that's where we may need to have community partnerships, or we may need to really rethink the metrics that we're using. But the bottom line is, we will decide collectively together what will be the priorities. We will have goals established that we will be able to measure, and then we will transparently work toward achieving them.
Do I get to do a follow-up question?
It's within that same area.
Yes. You spoke, very impressed by your answer. must say. But let's talk about that community partnership and what you've done in Caddo with community and partnership. And, you know, if you can dab a little bit more into that.
Absolutely. And when in my prospectus that's in front of you, one of the things that I talk about, one of the greatest challenges that we have is rebuilding the community trust. Ensuring that we are reaching out to the community and that we are involving them within the process. I think if we're very honest, we have many members of our community who feel like they bring a problem to us, they bring a concern to us, we look at them, we listen to them, and then we move on and do what we want to do. I'm publicly telling you that will not be the case if I'm selected as superintendent. One of the very first things I will do is I will sit with each of you and I will ask and listen to you as you tell me what you feel are the greatest opportunities for our district, but also what are the things that are getting in the way. And then listening to that, one of the first questions or requests I will have of you is, can I come with you into your district? Can I come with you into your community and sit and listen to them? The difference is going to be, I'm not just going to listen. I'm going to identify those that are not the naysayers, because let me tell you, we all have people who come and point fingers and tell us what we're not doing right.
Yeah.
But what I want to be able to make sure that we do is have the people who are coming and bringing us their concerns and are willing to become part of the solution. Those are available. And one of the comments that I made earlier, it doesn't matter the community. There are talented people who are willing to sit down at the table and be a part of the solution.
Thank you. We will now move to Mr. Umling.
Thank you, Madam President. Good morning, Mr. Burton. Late morning.
Yes.
One of the things, the new superintendent must be an excellent and effective communicator who is professional and communicates well not only with the board, but also with all audiences, including the community, staff members, students, and patrons. Communication is the key to success, and without communication, there will be a lack of trust. Therefore, the superintendent must be inclusive of the diverse stakeholders who make up Caddo Parish Schools. What process and procedure would you implement to ensure board policies, the strategic plan, and other directives and crucial information from the district are successfully communicated to our schools, community, and the media?
Thank you, Mr. Umling. I do agree that communication is essential for any body, and especially a public body, and ensuring that each constituent receives accurate information. One of the very first things, if I am selected as your superintendent, that you will find is we will revise our digital communication platforms. You're going to see a different website pretty quickly, and the reason why is it's too cumbersome. It takes you multiple clicks to find something. We have information stacked upon each other, and many times the public struggles when they're wanting information about the latest policy or the latest revision or a strategic plan update. I've already mentioned my plan to have a dashboard that will show our work to the public, not only just to our central office staff and our school staff, but every constituent in this community. I will have a public dashboard, and that will be on our website. But other than that, as far as reaching out and communicating, we need to ensure that the way that we are communicating is reaching all families. There are some families where social media is the accurate way of communicating with them. In today's time, we will track and review who is receiving our information and what means by which we can improve upon that. The other thing that I'm a big believer on is our very best communication source are our principals and our teachers and our support staff in schools. If you really want to know what's going on, if you really want to get the message out, you must start at the schoolhouse. It doesn't start at central office. And so I will ensure that our principals, our teachers, and our support staff are well informed of our work, our goals, and our progress. One of the things also that I will do is ensure that my ear is leaned toward each of those groups of people on revisions to those. A practice that I heard a friend of mine give me some wisdom the other day and basically said, you know, Mr. Burton, if this happens for you, one of the things that I would suggest you do is go in the school, meet the principal, let the principal know you're here, and immediately go to the cafeteria. And go find those cafeteria workers and ensure that the cafeteria workers know how much you appreciate them. Well, I appreciated that, but one of the things I thought about is you can go all the way back in the history of any time that I've worked in this district, and you will find that support staff is telling you, I listen to them, I hear them, and I communicate with them. So I will ensure that we're transparent. I will also ensure that we are involving the community and giving them the information they need.
Thank you, Mr. Burton.
Next is Dr. Dozart.
Mr. Burton, thank you for coming to your interview. My question, what communication method do you utilize to communicate with board members to build trust and a healthy superintendent relationship?
Thank you, Dr. Dozart. Well, one of the things that I think that I have an upper hand on is I know each of you very, very well. We have worked in the community together. We've worked in a variety of situations together, and I think I have a great relationship with each and every one of you. So there's going to be no time lost in establishing a relationship because, one, it's already there. Second, in my personal sit down with you, which by the way will not, it will last as long as you want it to last. If you want it to be here at central office, that will happen. If you want it in your living room, or if you want it at a restaurant, we will sit and we will walk through and hear from you. But Dr. Dozart, one of the first questions I'm going to ask is, what are the protocols for us to follow on a day-to-day basis? What works for you so that I am honoring you as a board member in a protocol of communication so that I'm effectively communicating with you? Some of you love email, some of you love text, and some of you love me to pick up the phone and call. So whatever way and protocol that you establish, we will do. The second thing is we will discuss board communication protocol. If we have something that's coming in front of you at the board that I feel we need to discuss in detail, I want to ensure that we have set protocols so that you, when you come to a meeting, you're well prepared. You don't just receive something on board docs. You have the thorough depth of knowledge in order to discuss, ask questions, and be able to eventually vote. And lastly, I would establish protocols around emergency procedures. We're a very large district. We all know from recently that there are emergencies that happen. And if they do, how can I quickly get you the information as quickly as possible so that you're not having to hear the information from the media or from social media. But other than that, I will establish those protocols and ensure that everyone on my executive team follows those protocols.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. McLean.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Burton. The new superintendent must be confident in decision-making and willing to solve problems by addressing a multitude of challenges, and will successfully collaborate, prioritize, delegate, and lead the Caddo Parish Public Schools in a positive direction. The new superintendent must possess strategic planning skills, setting long-term goals and outlining the specific steps needed to achieve them. So here's my question for you. Problem solving is a key role of the superintendent. How do you approach decision-making when resolving short-term issues and long-term problems? Please provide an example of a decision you recently made that had a high impact on your work.
Thank you, Ms. McLean, for that. In my in my prospectus, one of the things that I mentioned, and also in the video that I was able to share with you during that very first video, one of the things that I mentioned is I look at problems, first of all, as opportunities for us to do things differently. When my team constantly will hear from me the question, we're getting these results, why are we getting the results? What is the root cause for us getting these results? And because of that, is our work attacking the cause, or is it a hint or an approach that we're taking without really looking at a thorough root cause analysis? Many times we in education are very guilty of moving too quickly to solve a problem. We see an issue, we look at data, and then we quickly jump on programs, we quickly jump on resources, or we hire outside consultants to come in and focus on a problem. One of the things when I entered this seat, we had over 53 programs that we were supporting in academics. Within 2 years, I trimmed that down to 12 because we had too many programs that were not getting us the results. So when you ask about my problem-solving method, it is first of all centered around what is the root core issue that's causing the problem. As far as a recent decision that I have made, is I changed how we establish support teams in our district. For a long time, we had a team of staff members that were basically they were on call. Anybody could call them and they could go out to the school and they could support a grade level or they could support a principal. And what I found is some were being called and others weren't. And so one of the things that I did is, especially in a day where we're finding we have more and more teachers that are coming from non-traditional education settings, so their content knowledge is not as strong. Also, we have many of our principals who are assistant principals who are leading schools that do not have what I had, a decade of teaching and a decade of being a principal. They are moving pretty quickly into these roles, and so they need greater support. And so what I did is I rearranged the support and created, through our executive school directors, teams of people to, when a school director goes and sees a problem, they have somebody on their team that can immediately go and support that teacher. They don't need to wait and get on someone's schedule. They have someone that's almost like a Minuteman who can be there that afternoon and lead a PLC. Or they can go and pick up the phone and have someone come in that teacher's classroom and present a model lesson. Those are all things that we've done, and probably one of the greatest changes of central office, because now, as hopefully every principal will tell you, when I first became Chief Academic Officer, we were a system that evaluated teachers and we supervised teachers. And one of the first things that I did is I changed every one of those supervisors to specialists. Because if we from central office are going into schools and supporting teachers, we don't need someone else telling the teacher what they're doing wrong. They already know they're struggling. The principal can tell them they're struggling. Their kids' behavior or academics is telling that they're struggling. What they needed is support. And so we reestablished support teams to be able to be on call and provide, again, almost instant support for all teachers.
Thank you, Mr. Burton.
Thank you.
Does anybody know what that noise is? Is it up there?
Unmanned camera. Turn it off. Turn it off.
Yeah.
Okay, well then we need to
Then
find
take
out
it
whose it
outside.
is.
He's out.
We have plenty of.
Is it plugged in?
It's not my fault.
We will now move to Dr. Vincent.
Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Had to check my time. Thank you, Mr. Burton, for obviously being here today. The Caddo Parish School stakeholders have identified many significant challenges facing the district. One such issue has been the perceived disparities in allocation of funds, leading to a great divide between the top-tier schools and DNF schools. How would you address these concerns to ensure each school is being funded equitably?
Thank you, Dr. Vinson, for that question. First of all, when we're talking about disparities, I think we have to look at it from different angles. Most of the time, when someone is saying that there's a disparity, it's really not around academic resources or support. Because one of the things that we can do is look at what we are spending per student, and I would put what resources and support, not only through academics and the general fund, but also through our Title I dollars, of what are we doing to provide in the gap support for students that need it the most. So if someone's talking about academic disparity, typically there's miscommunication there, which means we have to do a better job of communicating with our citizens and with our parents to ensure that they know what resources are available. But when others talk about disparity, many times what they're talking about is building and grounds. They're walking and they're looking at facilities and they're saying, this school A has this facility, my school B has this facility. One seems to be better. What can we do about that? So one of the things that I will do with our operations team, which is led by Mr. Patrick Greer, is we will quickly sit down and we will do a disparity study. I will look at every single facility that we have to ensure that, first of all, it meets the needs of the students it serves. If we're finding that we have great disparity around enrichment or extracurricular offerings because of facility, then we will prioritize that. And as we've said earlier, then that would need to be a part of our strategic plan, that you all, again, tell me, here are the areas that we want to prioritize, and as you prioritize those, then we will work on them. One of the other questions that we will have to ask is how we disperse capital improvement funds. Right now, we disperse capital improvement funds on basically an equity or an equality basis, where we look and we have X number of dollars, and then we go and principals are able to give us what their needs are, and then we start with each director and we go around and we allow the directors to select what projects they want to advocate for their schools. But Dr. Benson, if we have disparity and we as a board, and you've looked at me and said we have this disparity and this needs to be prioritized, then I would say that I would need to work with Mr. Greer and others for us to revise that
Yes,
process.
sir. I wanted to let you, because I don't want anybody to think I'm being rude, but I'm talking about from an academic standpoint. I'm on Louisiana Believes right now, and I'm looking at data. When we talk about staffing formula, I mean sending our best teachers, educators, the whole 9 yards to where it's needed most. So I mean, can you speak academically in regards to the disparity? Because again, when I'm looking at...
Are you talking about academic performance?
Yes, sir. Yes,
Okay.
sir. Because that's what I mean. And I mean equity in regards to sending the best soldiers. I was in the military. When we were losing the war, we sent the special forces. We don't continue to send our regular soldiers. So what I mean disparity, are you willing, I shouldn't say willing, to identify from an academic standpoint those disparities? Send, for an example, reading specialists, the staffing formulas, things of that nature that you and I spoke about. So I'm not talking about operation, I'm talking strictly academics. So, yes, sir.
Absolutely. As far as, and I can, excuse me for misunderstanding, that you only wanted, that you were talking about not a general disparity. As far as what we will do in order to prioritize the students that need the most, I think my last 11 years as Chief Academic Officer has shown that I'm willing to do that. I use a tiered approach for the support of the schools that I serve as Chief Academic Officer. When I tier a school and I sit down with that director and we talk about what supports are needed, here are the things that we look at. First of all, we get staffing. And we ensure, first of all, do we have a leader that's experienced? If they're not experienced, then that executive director needs to spend more time and we need to provide more support there. The second thing we need to make sure, as you mentioned, the staff that's being selected by that principal in school. Ms. Woolfolk in the past as HR Chief of Human Resources can tell that I go in constantly to HR and say, we have an issue at this school and we need to be able to provide additional support. So yes, as your superintendent, will I be someone who will look at the academic or instructional disparities and advocate for them in every single way, sir. We are doing that now. It's a tiered approach around staffing. We are also doing it around allocation of funding. If someone is a Tier 3 school, then we look at how are you spending your funds to ensure that it's getting the greatest return on investment for students. So absolutely. As far as me encouraging you as a board to change policy that would allow us to increase staffing formula, please remember all of our staffing formulas and allocated positions are coming from general fund budget. I cannot pull positions from the sky, but I make sure with the allocated positions from general fund and all federal positions that we will ensure that the positions are needed. And let me say one other thing. I think to help everybody in this building understand truly what those students need, here's a change that I'm going to make. And I'll make this within the very first week that I'm superintendent, is everyone here who is at a supervisor's level or above. Not talking about a secretary, I'm not talking about, I'm talking about if you're at the supervisor level or above, you're going to sub in this district at least 4 times a year. You're also, if you can't sub in this district 4 times a year, then you will tutor a child that's in a Caddo Parish school, Title I school. You will tutor that child every week. Now that's a choice. And many times we find that and those many times that are making some decisions that impact funding or that impact staffing, they've not been in schools lately. And so one of the things that we will do very quickly is ensure that everyone as a supervisory level will understand the challenges that our principals are facing in today's time.
Thank you. Mr. Dixon?
Good afternoon. I'm sure we're there now. We're close. We're close. Mr. Burton, another criteria is courage. Given the challenges facing Caddo Parish, from declining enrollment to decreasing finances, the next superintendent must have the courage to make hard decisions necessary to correct deficiencies in the district. The new superintendent must have successful experience in an urban district with turnaround schools and the courage to address issues in each school and at the district level. My question is this. A superintendent must exhibit tremendous courage to make hard decisions when addressing issues and problems that arise. How have you demonstrated courage through your leadership?
Thank you, Mr. Dixon. I think, as I've stated before, I'm not afraid to challenge the status quo. I have brought to of course, Dr. Gorey, who I had the privilege of serving under, I brought to him multiple innovative ideas. And if you can ask anyone who sits on our executive cabinet now, I typically am the one that's trying to poke holes in something in our policies, our procedures, our systems. Matter of fact, just recently, I struggled with the fact that too many of our classrooms did not have access to some academic resources because it was a rostering issue. Adults were getting in the way of kids having access to resources we were paying for. And we were 6 weeks into school and students still didn't have access to those resources. And I publicly brought those up in a cabinet meeting and said it's embarrassing for a district as large as we are to have those kind of problems. And so I will be courageous. I've done things such as brought forth the very first teaching academy that any school system in this area has had. Matter of fact, I think we were only the second or third district in the entire state of Louisiana who was bold enough to say, you know what, we will start our own internal certification program. And we've done that, and it has been a model of exceptionality as far as the success. Matter of fact, if you go back and you look at VAM scores from our CTA graduates, many times they're exceeding the regular graduates that we're finding. Same thing with Caddo Virtual Academy. That was something I brought to the table and said, why don't we look at creating a different type of school for students who are struggling in traditional school. So Mr. Dixon, as far as someone who will challenge the status quo and who will stand up for what is not working well, and again, I've already publicly said we will be very transparent around our progress. I think I have a proven track record of being that bold leader.
Is my time up?
No.
Okay, because I didn't see no time anywhere. Well, other follow-up, since I do have a little more time. In my statement, we talked about declining enrollment, and with enrollment decline, there's decline in finances.
That's my question.
Go ahead, and if I don't, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Burton, for being here.
Ms.
Thank you
Stark.
for being here. Mr. Burton, the Caddo Parish School District has been experiencing declining enrollment due to private, parochial, and charter schools recruiting our students. Additionally, employee retention has become an issue with many moving to higher-paying districts. How would you address each of these issues?
Our reduction in enrollment is something that's a very serious problem. As a matter of fact, will be one of the main priorities that we will address as we begin this work. I think we are missing an opportunity by not revamping school and parent choice in many of our schools. Parents want choice. Many of you have challenged me in my position around magnet schools for several times, and because of that challenge, one of the things that I've become to appreciate is when we really look at when someone leaves a Caddo Parish school, why do they leave? Many times they are not leaving to go into another school that's going to provide better academic service. They're leaving because basically we told them, no, you're going to go to this one school and only this school. And if that family has, let's say, a special needs child or someone that's not going to qualify for an academic magnet, then basically we've told them as a district, you have no choice. That's all you have is what we're providing you. So what I would like to propose, and I want to make sure that I preface this as I think the community needs to help us design this. This is not going to be the mistake that we've made in the past where we've created solutions and we told the public what we're going to do. But an idea that I do have is the fact, why don't we look at this entire district and create 4 K-8 open enrollment academies that would allow a family from kindergarten through 8th grade to go to a school across town free of charge with transportation and receive an education that interest them. Now, when I give you some suggestions or ideas, please let me preface, I think the community needs to decide what these are, not me. But one of the things I could say right now is how amazing would it be for us to have a K-8 career and technical academy where we are building awareness and exposure for young children around the careers that are available for them. Many of our students do not take advantage of the Career and Technical Center and the opportunities, not because they choose not to, they don't know. So if we're able to provide them with opportunities to become aware, how exceptional would that be? What if we did the same thing for health occupations? You know, if we look at North Louisiana Economic Partnership, it tells us healthcare is the #1 job-focused area we need to be focused as a school district on, because we are in this healthcare market that is rich and is only going to be growing. We already have a STEM academy that's not nearly reached its potential. So what if we created and boosted that K-8 STEM academy? What if we did the same thing also to a law or leadership academy, where we are actually possibly preparing students to know more about civics and to know more about citizenship, and to allow them possibly then to go on to maybe the Huntington Law Magnet. See, we have options for families when they're in high school, but if you're in kindergarten, first, second, third grade, unless you're in the magnet program, you have no option. And so what they're doing is they're leaving us, they're going into charters around, and again, not for better academic reasons, but because they have no choice. And what this has done is created a revolving door so that we're losing kids, but guess what? Then we receive them back. So my opportunity simply says this: let's create student choice. Let's create options where the community tells us these are the primary areas we're interested in. Let's partner with our community agencies such as our local colleges and universities with Cyber Command Center, all of these that we have, Cyber Innovation Center, all of these partnerships that we have, Junior Achievement, all of these partners who are willing to come within our schools, and let's build options that will increase and draw people back to Caddo Parish Public Schools.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Trammell.
Thank you, Madam President. Mr. Burton, bridge builders, given the diversity of the Caddo community, be it race, income, educational attainment, or religious beliefs, the new superintendent must understand the differences and works to find common interests to build a positive culture and ensure equitable educational experiences for all the students in Caddo. The new superintendent must be a person focusing on public relations and be active in the community to build relationships with all stakeholders to provide opportunity for growth for this school district. The question is, given the diversity of the Caddo communities, how would you build a positive culture of caring and service within the district and each community?
Thank you. Mr. Trammell, well, one of the very first things is I need to be in those communities.
Right.
As I said earlier, I will meet with you, and I hope we don't set up just a one and done community partnership. I would hope that as often as you want to, that we will be able to go into your communities, sit, and we will listen. And also share real data, not opinions, but show data about the work that we're doing. The second thing that we have to do is do more than just listen. We have to respond. And I do think, as I said earlier, that there are many in our community who feel that we look at them and we listen to them and then we just go on and do what we want to do. And so I will ensure that one of the things that is going to be primary in my administration here, if I am selected as superintendent, is I'm going to have their voice around the table. I'm not only going to go to them, but I'm going to draw those who are, and by the way, it doesn't matter what area of town, from Vivian to Cedar Grove to Broadmoor, whatever, There are talented people that want to see Caddo Parish schools succeed. And those talented, dedicated people, we will bring in to allow them to be able to give us an outside voice to be able to create a solution. And I think the other thing is I constantly need, because we have so many schools, I need to be able to have the ear of principals and I need to have the ear of teachers. And so I will have advisory councils for those to make sure that we are meeting. And a lot of times we at central office may think something's going really well, but the application of it may fail. And so we may have the greatest idea, but if it is not being applied effectively, then I need to know that and build that trust back.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Little.
Good morning.
Good morning.
There are only two left, so we're going to get through this.
All right.
I do like your idea of having supervisors act as substitutes. I would love for my colleagues on the board to have that experience as well. My question for you is, it has been said that a great superintendent knows how to balance getting tasks completed and building relationships both internally and externally. How would you balance the challenge of completing the day-to-day requirements while building relationships with all stakeholders?
Mr. Little, I think, first of all, that begins with ensuring that I have a very efficient, talented team. One of the tasks that we also will complete pretty soon is a total review of all of central office support to ensure that we're efficient and that we are not just replicating what we've done. If I am selected as the next superintendent, I'm going to change even the structure of the chief academic officer position. I think it's too large. I think we need to be able to have a better pulse of what is happening in the schools. And so one of the things that I will do is I'm going to reduce one executive position within the very first week based upon that reorganization, knowing what is needed. I think if you look in my prospectus, you will see that I've been in every area of this community for years. I serve, on a Friday night, you may see me flipping a coin at the middle of a football game, and then you may see me at a chamber meeting that next, Tuesday. So I'm entrenched in all areas of this community, not only in my own personal community, but all over this community, and I have been for years. So to answer your question, I think first of all, it goes back to ensuring that I've put together the right people in the right seats, that we create a protocol by which I am able to know how they are progressing in their work. And going back to Mr. Dixon's question, if something is not working, be bold enough to make that change and ensure that I'm moving that person out of the seat. And then lastly, be seen in the community. I need to be, because many times the superintendent is the face of the district. And so if I'm going to be in every single school, if I'm going to be in every part of this community, then we have to have a team that is behind the scenes ensuring that they're doing the work. And again, we will have transparent ways of measuring that work.
Thank you for your answer. If I could ask a follow-up question. In similar fashion, in building bridges externally, there have been some people that have opposed you personally as a candidate, not many, but there have been many who have opposed the process of your candidacy. What do you anticipate doing to build and collaborate and form relationships with those parties, some who may be in this room, for the overall success of our school system?
Because I won't need the introductions, I think we can move that process pretty quickly. And what that will mean is I will be available, whether that is coffee in the boardroom where I'm able to sit and listen and gain a perspective. I've also said I'm going to them. I do not mind going to them and ensuring that I am very transparent with what my plan is. I have outlined a plan that is focused on not one community, but in the betterment of the district, and I'm going to invite them to be a part of that solution. I also recognize that, you know, we have a district that's very diverse, and so because of that, I will make sure my executive team is extremely diverse. I will make sure that we all, when we are walking into a school, that we are ensuring that people will look at each one of us and will value us not because of the color of our skin, but they will value us because of our character, and they will value us because of the results that we've been able to show. And if we are doing that openly, and we're, again, showing the data and being honest and transparent about the work, no one, I think, would be a critic of that process.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Rachal.
Thank you, Madam President. I can almost say good afternoon. Thank you for being here, Mr. Burton. Criteria number 6 is background. It is the desire that a new superintendent will have a terminal degree with a strong academic background, policy development experience, and knowledge, and a clear understanding of the budget and financial matters. The new superintendent must be transparent in all issues and decisions related to the district to build trust. The question is, the Caddo Parish School District needs a superintendent with a strong academic background. Please tell us your experience with building strong academic programs and demonstrated improvement for students, and what initiatives you would advocate for in Caddo that will move the needle of our students.
Mr. Rachal, thinking back through 11 years of this journey, we have to well, first of all, we have to start with our work that was the transformation zone. That was the very first large initiative that we launched with Dr. Gorey's administration, and it is something that totally has shifted support in this district. Many times, as you all open a school board meeting, you have students come and are saying the pledge, and many times you would have only had a few schools represented in the past. Now, every single school is represented because of a lot of the work that we've done that's highlighted their needs. So first of all, I think looking at how we have addressed the transformation zone, how we have changed that from being transformation to achievement zone, and looking at the percent of students who are now no longer in failing schools. As a matter of fact, if you actually put paper to pencil, you will find that we have 44% less students in failing schools than we did 11 years ago. Now, honestly, we have to admit that we know some of those are because we've closed schools. I mean, that's true. But when you look at those, and we've also lost students in the district, but when you look at who is leaving our district, the large majority of those are students who were already proficient. So when we're looking at moving kids and ensuring better operations, I think first you can look at our achievement zone. The second thing is look at our work past pandemic. The pandemic caused, because of the interruption of learning, it was something that was totally out of our control. People were afraid, they weren't coming to school. We had to, on a dime, quickly turn academic focus into a Zoom, and imagine how virtual Zoom lessons worked for first graders learning to read. When those students came back to us, they were farther behind than they were when they started. So what did we do? We quickly started looking at 3 things. We looked at the quality of resources, we looked at the amount of time spent with those students, and we looked at the content knowledge of our leaders and teachers. You all as a board, I hope you always remember those 3 priority areas, because that's the only thing that matters. It doesn't matter what school you're talking about. The 3 things that make a difference is, number 1, the quality of resources. And I have been a gatekeeper with academic programs. You can imagine the number of phone calls that we receive knowing that we have high stakes tutoring going on now within our schools, and there's funding available for that. Because of that, we are getting calls all the time for vendors wanting to come in and use our service. But we've been very protective of that work. So top quality materials, ensuring that every kid has the very best Tier 1 curriculum, no matter what they want to do. And many times, I've had to look at principals and say, the answer to you wanting to pull that new material in is no. We are not changing from our academic plan. We are using what the state and what we know is very best. The second thing is time. You as a board doubled the amount of time that we were able to spend with middle school math last year, or 2 years ago. And what results did we receive? Just 1 year ago, we all stood on this stage and we clapped each other on the back. We shook hands, we looked out at the TV cameras, and we all smiled because of the fact 98% of our schools grew. Now, you don't hear that all the time. 98% of our schools grew, and 15 schools changed their letter grade. Now, why was that? It was not because of a program. It was because we, as a board, valued resources, we valued time, and we started building expertise. And we will continue that if I'm superintendent. This year, even though school performance scores aren't out, what are the things that we know? Well, first of all, we know that we've continued. Well, first of all, everybody thought as an urban district that we would fall. After having that much growth, they assumed we would fall. We did not. We've maintained. And matter of fact, we've even grown by about 20% the number of students who are scoring at mastery or higher. Our work in literacy and numeracy has been recognized by an outside vendor as one of the best in Louisiana. I know my time is up.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have a follow-up question from Ms. Green before we move to the last one.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got to ask.
Well, I actually had a follow-up myself on my own question.
Well, then push the button.
Well, I didn't know that we were doing that.
We're doing it before the last question.
Before I get on the best.
Ms. Green, are you okay?
Ms. Green?
Are you okay if I ask
Your follow-up question.
Yeah, well, after I ask mine.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You need to push the button.
okay.
It's on my question. It's a follow-up on
Oh, then you want to come back to you?
Oh, no, well, if it's right up under something he's talking about, I definitely understand that.
Yeah, mine's a backup.
Oh, okay, well, yeah, I agree. You could go ahead if it's dealing with this particular criteria that you're talking about. Yes, sir, go ahead,
Ms.
please.
Rachel?
We're speaking about background. Are you looking at Caddo Parish school system of being your background in the future and potentially moving on elsewhere?
I hope you all will open up a prospectus and look at page 2. And if you look at page 2, you're going to see my family. I'm the epitome of someone that has skin in the game because I have 3 children. I have a son who's an assistant principal at Donnie Bickham. I have a middle son, and matter of fact, right now, he and his family are at Willis Knight in Piermont having my second granddaughter.
Congratulations.
And my phone is on silent. They're at the hospital. They went in at midnight last night. And I've not heard from them, but I promise you I'm going to do a beeline as soon as this interview is over to go hold a granddaughter. He is a coach and a teacher at Northwood High School. The girl on the left that you see is Anna Kate. She just graduated from Louisiana Tech and is a kindergarten teacher. All 3 of them teach in public schools, not any in magnet schools. They teach in public schools. And my wife, who you see right there, is finishing her 33 years in education while I'm starting my 34th. If you read about, someone said one time, isn't that strange that you have so many people in your family in education? It was until I actually did some research. And if you go back in generations of my family, you will find that I didn't grow up here. I'm not from Caddo. I didn't go to any school in Caddo Parish. Matter of fact, I grew up about 40 miles east of here off the Goodwill Road in Minden, Louisiana. I went from kindergarten through 12th grade in a small village, not even a town, or it wasn't a city, definitely wasn't a city. It was the village of Doylean. And I went from kindergarten through 12th grade in that. My grandmother drove the school bus and worked in the cafeteria at Doylean High School. My father served on the Webster Parish School Board for 12 years. And what's so funny is when I go back and I've found many of his agendas that they had in the 70s and 80s, you know what? There are many of the same challenges that we're facing now in 2024. My mother was a teacher for 34 years in that district. I'm not going anywhere. Matter of fact, I've invested 33 years. My family has started investing 33 years. And I hope to have 2 new, I'm also trying to assist with the enrollment with some grandchildren. But no, sir. I am fully invested in this community, and I will be here in this community.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Green.
Thank you. Mr. Burton, you mentioned something, going back to community and going back to the challenge that we face, especially in high-poverty communities, when it relates to that school choice that we talked about. Sounds like that you have really thought this, have been looking into this plan a long time when you say you want to get programs that communities can help you form. If you don't mind, can you kind of tell me how that would look, you putting this process together and getting this where people can send their children to the choice that they want? Because to me, I think that's very important.
Yes, ma'am. I think anytime when we look at a district where 70% of our students are coming from impoverished backgrounds, we have to be able to address the poverty issue. And again, that's going to be addressed through awareness. How am I going to do this? First of all, it will be in those committee meetings, or not committee, community meetings, where we are out, and I'm going to ask the open question. If given the opportunity, what types of special academies would you like to be able to have your child go to? The only requirement I ask of that parent is if they go to that academy, they have to stay 1 year. They have to have skin in the game as well. So I ask them, if we're going to bus you from your school across town to an academy, stay there for at least 1 year. I also will, once we get a kind of a clearinghouse of ideas, then I will present that to you, and a part of our quick plan will be to distill those down to the major priority areas. And then what I would like to do is be able to start identifying those community experts and volunteers who would be willing to come on board and advise us as we create this path. If we're really going to be honest, we have to make sure that the community is with us all along the way when this is developed. Again, what I do not want to happen, and by the way, it will not happen, is the fact we're going to change the name of a building outside and not change what happens on the inside. So we're going to make sure that the awareness, we're going to make sure that the experiences are such that we're preparing kids to have options going into high school.
And one more, you know, when we talk about these different academies, you also have a budget tied with that sometimes you have a program name and that money is not necessarily allocated towards that program to make it the best program that it could be to flourish. Could you please kind of speak on that just a tad, and I'll be done with you.
Well, Ms. Green, that would be the case if we don't prioritize that area.
Okay.
And what I feel is, first of all, we have to totally change how we're budgeting and how we are approaching, especially with the challenge with general fund dollars coming forth, with ESSER going away. We can no longer just look at an allocated amount and divvy up that allocated amount to different departments. We need to almost flip the script and be able to say, for us as a district, because of our strategic plan and our communication together, these are the items that we have prioritized. It may be, we want to ensure we're double blocking math and we're double blocking ELA in middle school. If you don't think I had to fight for that during this past general budget, I mean, we fought, Ms. Woolfolk shaking her head, we fought for that because it was something easily to cut that would have saved millions of dollars. But it gave us a huge academic return on that investment. And so what we are going to have to do is decide if these are the things that matter and academies and parent choice matter, then we're going to have to ensure that we budget for them. They themselves won't really cost us that much more money, other than maybe some staff positions. What's going to cost us more money is how we transport those students. And so we will have to begin working immediately, coming up with an efficient way to transport students. But we already have magnet school exchanges. Why can't we replicate that type of program and get a child who's not in our magnet school to have the opportunity to have access to an academy across town? And I think we can do that.
Thank you.
Dr. Vincent?
Yes, sir. Ms. Green touched on somewhat of that. I'm just curious, Mr. Burton, if it's well, first I need to say this. I want to say this. I do have a high regard for you. I saw that in your pamphlet. I remember when I first recognized you as a referee, you were at Booker T. Washington. I was on the fence, so I wanted to say that publicly. But at the same time, I do still have some questions. If we go with the 4 K-8s, why can't they all just have the same resources in four buildings versus still doing with the busing crosstown and all that stuff, because that still also costs money and that creates some of the transportation issue?
I don't necessarily think you can go as in depth with an academic area if you are blending it with other academic areas. We're already doing that anyway. That's generalized public education, and we're covering right now in every school, we're covering STEM, we're covering career and tech ed, but we know what we're getting, and it's limited awareness. And so what I would say is let's go deep. Let's make sure as we are, when we're going back and we're building, there's 3 things: that awareness, that exposure, and then experiences. I mean, I want these kids to be able to go to, in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, I want them to be taken to a college or a university and let them visit with someone who is teaching cyber security and be able to talk about, oh, that's what that is. I will never forget last year when we did the health occupations scholarship and we brought all of those students up here on stage recently. I had a student tell me, I was going in accounting and I didn't even know what it was. Now I have a career that I have gone into the hospital, I've seen it, I've met a mentor, and now I'm choosing this health occupations path. And that student only got that opportunity because of exposure. So what if we don't start that from an earlier age, build it up, then by the time they're entering high school, they're ready. And then they can go in that specialized program that will ensure that they're prepared for a successful high school experience.
Yes, sir. 2 more. I'm thinking when we talk about the equity question, going back to my initial question, and want to speak about the academics in that funding formula, are you willing to look at that and tweak it? For an example, we know that if a building doesn't have a certain amount of students in it, they may not get a reading specialist. So that's what I mean by making those hard decisions versus a principal having to advocate also so hard, and we know the process.
Yes, I do think we as a board and as a superintendent and executive team will have to continue looking at right sizing. We know that we have, in order to, I don't want it there ever to be a school that is so under-enrolled that they're not receiving the resources they need to be successful. Right. But if they are under-enrolled, and until we come up with a solution, will I ensure that they have everything that they need, including reading interventionists, Yes, sir. I
Yes,
will.
sir. What's your opinion about why schools are underpopulated? And on the other side, do we have schools that are overpopulated? And what policies would you put forward to right-size that? Because we have some policies in place that have helped to skew that population.
Well, I don't think that's really, as far as under-enrolled, I think we can look at several reasons why. First, there's been a migration of our outside, of our citizens outside this community. For many years, there was this assumption that they've just gone to a neighboring parish or they've gone to private school, and that's not the case. You know where they're going? To Dallas, to Houston, to outside, and they're going because of opportunities that can be provided for their family. And so, as I said in my video earlier, I don't think we can look at business and industry and point the finger at them and say, y'all have to fix this. I think we have to go partner with them, ensuring that we have schools that business and industry is going to be proud of so that they can attract those back. I think that will be helpful to stopping. What are some other things? I think you're hinting toward magnet schools and the fact that maybe we have some schools that are overpopulated.
Well, not necessarily, I have to cut you off because I don't want to get cut off. Not necessarily, and we could obviously talk about this a little later, but there's policies we can put in place. For an example, attendance zones. Some are this big, some are very small. So that's what I'm speaking of.
Absolutely.
And finally, I want to get to this so you can answer it in your closing. I looked at this, it does say that we had, growth 10% in math and 10% in reading, but it doesn't highlight how many below basic and approaching basic. And I say that because I teach a data course. I'm in Louisiana Believes all the time. I use our schools as examples. So that's what I want you to speak on. How do we move? This is wonderful, and I know the money we put toward it, but how do we move? Because it's 71% of some of, I'm just looking, are basic or below, not 35. You see what I'm saying? And so that's what people are very, very, very concerned about.
I think we have to do many things to increase proficiency levels. The very first thing that we've got to make sure that we're doing is addressing kindergarten readiness. Students are coming to us way, way behind. And you may say, oh, so they only know some of their letters or numbers. No, sir. The other day, I actually had the opportunity to visit with a principal who had a child at their school who was entering kindergarten that did not know their real name. Now think about that a minute. They only knew their nickname. Mr. Dixon had reminded us recently at a school board meeting that there is a story behind the numbers. So when you're talking about non-proficiency, we have to also at the same time talk about what are we doing to support 70% of our families that are impoverished. And the very best investment we can make is early childhood education. Part of the plan of what I'm going to look at for an executive team, and I will bring you, is I'm going to do a cost benefits analysis of adding a 4-year-old voluntary pre-K program to every neighborhood school in this district. Not tied to Title I, not tied to a parent's ability to be able to pay for it. But if we're really going to say, put our money where our mouth is, then we can't have a better investment than pre-K education. We could sit here and I could expound on what we know makes a difference with children. And we have already ensured that our team leads the Smart Start Network. That's 109 sites, 400 plus classrooms, where we're having a direct impact on the quality of education of that child from birth all the way through 4th grade. And if any of you want to go to any of those sites and see what is being taught and learned, because many people have this misunderstanding that real education just starts in kindergarten. We can catch them up, but there's critical research around the intellectual development that happens from birth until 4 years of age. And we have to be aware of that and work with that. So what will I do? I will ensure that, number one, we're working toward optimal enrolled schools. I will make sure that we are budgeting appropriately so that we can look at early childhood education and their Smart Start. The other thing I'm going to do is, I mentioned I'm going to reduce a position. Well, in doing that, I'm also then going to create, and within the schematic of that, I'm going to make sure that I have someone who is working directly with the directors on the application of what we're doing in the school system to address the challenges there. Because many times academics is too large. There's no way one person can be able to adequately support all of academics, all of accountability, all of Title I, all of ESSER, all of special education, all of school nurses, all of JROTC, and then you hold me accountable for it. So I want to be able to restructure that so I've got boots on the ground, where if we see that we have an issue of the problem, I've got people that will be able to address it immediately.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Vincent.
You forgot to unpack, and we'll talk about that later.
Unpack what?
You know, the policy whereby
Dr. Vincent.
Yes,
Thank
sir,
you.
you can do
Yes,
it within
we
your
can,
next.
absolutely.
Yes, sir, you know you can answer the next question.
Yes, sir.
We are now moving on to the final question from Ms. Bell.
Say the best for last. Don't start it. Okay, Mr. Burton. I don't have to ask you to research Caddo Parish. I don't have to ask you to research Caddo Parish School. What I want to know, please summarize to me your thoughts about the district. And if you selected, how would you approach your first 120 days on the job?
I'd like to frame the answer around what do I think are our greatest opportunities. And I think our greatest opportunities are, first of all, for all of us to have a reset around the work. And what would be the priority areas that I would ask us to look at? Well, first of all, I want us to, again, as I just said, I want us to look at expanding early childhood. The second thing, and Dr. Benson here, I go to your question of unpacking. I really think we've got to go back and do a thorough review of our policies, because many of our policies are getting in the way of innovation, getting in the way of being responsive to schools' needs. Now, we need policy, there's no doubt, it guides our work, but we need to go back and look at our policies. The other thing we've got to also do that will save us a lot of time and a lot of money is looking at our systems and our structures. Because just when I was frustrated a couple of weeks ago about the fact that kids weren't getting access to a resource because adults couldn't roster them appropriately, that's a system. And many times if you go through and look at the systems that HR is using, the systems that finance is using, the systems that IT is using, they are not talking to each other. They don't work well together. And we could really, I think, reflect on policies, our procedures, and our structures and benefit this district. We've got to expand career and technical education. And hats off to all of you who voted to be able to put $40 million in reserve for new facilities. And I'm not saying that's where it needs to go toward career and tech. What I'm just saying is we've got to be able to have new construction to energize this district. And we've got to be able to address some issues around overcrowding. So Ms. Bell, I think if we're looking at early childhood education, I think we're attacking our policies through review. We're looking at our structures and systems, and then we go back and look at what are the ways that we could provide new opportunities for kids for new access to buildings. I think that would be very positive for our district.
Can I do it? Okay, my follow-up question is this. I like the idea when you said that you're going to have those directors or something go back and teach or do something. And I was going to bring that before the board, because I'm thinking about board members going and sit in a classroom, work one day to see what a teacher feels, okay? But Is it way that you think that the community, because a lot of people do not understand actually what a classroom teacher go through or a supervisor. Do you think that you could implement a program where we can get some of those people, not the ones that always volunteering and going to the classroom, implement a program or something that can cause people to understand what it actually deals with being in the school system and I'm always on the teachers because I was one for 34 years. And nobody really know what it feel like until they there themselves.
Absolutely. The hardest job in our district right now are teachers and principals.
Right.
There's not anyone that's facing a harder job than our teachers or principals. They're finding kids that are coming in with experiences that have been so traumatic that it's caused them to be not only maybe intellectually behind, but also behaviorally challenged, and because of that, it's extremely tough. So I do think there needs to be an awareness of the challenge that goes in. It would also, I think, change how we would approach those challenges.
Right.
Instead of us just looking at what we think, we would be able to say, let me tell you what I experienced. Let me tell you what I know needs to happen. It would also distill for us what those priorities should be. Because at the end of the line, if we're not, and matter of fact, I wrote this down earlier and I wanted to make sure and say it. We need to ensure that any decision that we're making as far as spending money or providing resources, we ask ourselves, how many kids will benefit from this?
Mm-hmm.
If we can't substantiate that decision by knowing that it's reaching a large percentage, then we need to move on to something else. Because every action that we take should be able to improve the academic outcomes of the majority of the kids that we focus.
Thank you. Thank you.
I would like to thank you for coming today and being a part of this interview process.
So much.
Do you want to make a motion to adjourn?
I most certainly will. I move that we adjourn.
Second by Mr. Little.
Thank you.
Please vote.
Thank you all very much. I'm headed there now.